Today's date is March 12th, 1984. I'm going to be interviewing Louree Pottinger, who lives in the Hikes Point area of Louisville.
Date of birth, May 10th, 1899. School attended Louisville General Hospital School of Nursing, Louisville, Kentucky. Zip code I wouldn't know right now. Dates attended 1919 to 1922. Licensed 1922. A typical day in nursing school, classes and so forth. We were up at 7 o'clock, on duty at 7. In fact, we got up at 6. We had breakfast at 6:30, and we had classes from 7 to 9 at night. During the day, we would have time off, like 1 to 4 or 10 to 2. Those were our hours, and then we would go back and be on duty until 7 o'clock, and then we would go to classes. The kind of things that we did, my first year's work consisted mostly of housekeeping duties. I cleaned the bedside cabinets, the beds, the windowsills, and the utility rooms, and washed the urinals and the bedpans and the beds. They were all white beds. And changed babies' diapers. Now, I was put on the baby ward when I entered the School of Nursing, and we had a terrible epidemic of diarrhea, and one of the head nurses taught me to change diapers. I didn't need to be taught because I was from a big family and I knew how to do it, but anyway, I changed the diapers. Now, as for restrictions, we were in at 10 o'clock. On Saturday night, we could get out until 11. But on Sunday, if you were on duty, you worked from 7 till 1, or you worked from 1 to 7. Had a half a day on Sunday and a half day through the week sometime. Many times, most times, that half a day during the week, you had a class 7 to 9 at night, so you couldn't do very much. Now, the first job I had in nursing was I was a registered nurse in the outpatient clinic there at Louisville General Hospital for 1 year. And then the next 4 years, I was an assistant supervisor, operating room. Worked there as an operating room supervisor. And our hours were just the same. You were on duty, and you worked a half day. And you didn't have classes, of course, but that time schedule was just the same. And for vacation, you had 2 weeks vacation, but you didn't have very many holidays. Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving, I think, were the 3 main holidays we had. And my salary was $100 a month. But I lived inside the hospital now. And they did our laundry, and we had our board and room, which really wouldn't be so bad when you think of it today, but that was it. And nobody ever thought of getting a raise. You had that salary, $100 a month, and that was really something. And what did I do? Well, I did about what people do as an operating room supervisor. Other than this, we got up at night for all emergencies, and you were on duty every other night. And very few nights at General Hospital did you sleep all night, because you had to get up, and then you had to be up the next morning too. So at that time, you were certainly about worn out, and you'd go to bed. Well, I would say the relationship with the doctors was excellent. There never was a group of people that were more sympathetic to the to the needs of nurses than the doctors there at General Hospital, because they felt that we had it pretty hard. They thought we did a good job. And there was never any quibbling or any fussing and that kind of thing about it. Now, they screamed at us and all that kind of things, but we just assumed that was a part of the deal, and nobody ever thought of fighting back. Why, you wouldn't have dared ask any questions. But there's one of the doctors that's living that was the head surgeon in surgery. He's a patient up here at St. Matthew's Manor, and I've been told by many people that he doesn't know anything. He was the gentlest, kindest man that ever lived. His name was Dr. Hart Hagen. And, you know, even with his position as the chief of surgery, he never tried to get us or anything like that. And no one would ever think of reporting us to anybody, to the supervisors. They just tried to take care of us and see how easy they could make it for us.
I wish we had them like that out of veterans now.
Well, now our relationship with the dietitians, we never had that quibbling, but as a student nurse, I always think the dietitian would make us fix all these trays, you know, that went up to the patients, and then she would invite 4 people to eat lunch, some of her friends, and we'd have to cook that special lunch for them and fix it and all this kind of thing. And she had nice silver and cloths and napkins. We had cloth napkins and cloth tablecloths, and she showed us how to do all those things and how to wait tables. Well, we just thought we were as mad as wet hens about it because we had to do it. Well, one day it was as hot as blazes, and one of the nurses, a graduate of General, came down there. She had brought a patient in, and she had to have a tray for him. She'd brought him from somewhere that they wanted him there at the General Hospital. And she said, she was fanning, she says, "Whoo, how hot it is." Says, "I've been out 5 years today." Well, one of my classmates and I were in the diet kitchen. When she left, I was over there with our sleeves rolled up, cleaning pots and pans. I said, "Watkins, when I'm out of this place 5 years, if I haven't retired or made enough money to retire or married, I hope somebody knocks me in the head." And the person was the head of the medical, he was chief of the medical service, Dr. John Walker Moore. And he said, "What's that, Miss Pottinger?" Oh, I could have died. I didn't know he'd heard it, but I never visited that place in the next 30 or 40 years when I'd come back that he didn't say, "Well, have you made enough money to retire, or are you married?" Well, I hadn't done either one, but I never lived to get that down. Now, change in these areas over time in subsequent jobs. Well, I left there and went to Baptist Hospital and was an instructor for 5 years. Now, when I say an instructor, I taught nursing procedures, history of nursing, drugs and solutions, and ethics. You taught everything that no one else wanted to teach. And when I look back at it and think, I didn't know anything, how in the world could I teach anything? I just look back and wonder of all the things. And now then I left there and I went to Norton as a director of nursing. And I was there 3 years, and I really had problems there because the first thing I had was a supervisor, and one of the students, they were homosexuals. Well, I didn't know any more about that than a duck knows about it, but, you know, gossip that went around. Well, one night this supervisor went out with a group of people and the administrator of the place, and she came in, a bunch of them, And the night supervisor reported to me that she was with the administrator of the hospital when she came in, and she was drunk. She was going to the nurse's home. And she vomited all over the floor. Well, of course, the next morning when she told me that, I called her in and dismissed her, just like that. Well, in less than 2 hours, the administrator dismissed me. Well, that was all right, but I'll tell you, I really had the support of many or most of the doctors. They just went to bat for me, and I always remember Herbert Nolan. He said he never got into any messes, but this was one he was going to get into. Well, in less than 6 months, they dismissed that administrator. But anyway, I was gone, and I was living in Louisville with my sister and her friend had an apartment. They were teachers, and I was living with them and another girl that was the instructor there at Norton. She left when I did. Well, I started to school there at Spalding. They didn't have classes for nurses, but I was taking microbiology and chemistry, microbiology, chemistry, and home economics, things, dietetics, and things like that. Well, in less than 9 months, I got a job to go over Good Samaritan in Lexington as the director of nursing there. I went over there and was there for 14 years. And that was a wonderful experience. I was director of the school and of the service. And the administrator of that hospital was a woman, and she was a nurse, had been a nurse. She taught me a lot. She said, "Miss Pottinger, don't fool with the women. You'll never get anywhere if you fool with the women." And she said, "Now the thing for you to do," and I told her when I went I wanted to go to school. She said, "Sure, go on to school," and I'd go afternoon and night. Well, anyway, I was very active in nursing affairs and the School of Nursing. We got the School of Nursing into having classes over there. They had English and sociology and psychology, chemistry, anatomy and physiology, microbiology to start out with. Well, when I was over there, had classes in administration, and many of the teachers that were principals of high school would say to me, "Will you tell me what you're doing over here?" Said, "You don't need all this education to empty bedpans." I said, "Well, I don't empty bedpans all the time, and there's more to nursing than empty bedpans." Miss Johnson, that was the administrator, said, "Miss Pottinger, you invite 6 of those people home with you every Saturday to have lunch, and we'll take them through the hospital and show them, and we'll show them what the students, their classes and what they do, and things like that." Well, I did that. After the first year, I never had to recruit students. Those people went back, and all through the eastern part of the states, that's where they were. They would tell me when they'd write me about a student and say, "Now we can recommend her." And the doctors just couldn't get over the fact of what good students we got. Now, they were not too much in favor of us sending the students to the university when we started. They didn't see any need for it. But when we did it, Dr. John Scott, who was one of the older men, said he couldn't speak highly enough of the change in students. And people would say, "What is it?" He said, "These students can talk to you. They know what they're doing," and said they're not running, and when people come up and talk to them, they know what they're doing. And of course, over at the university, people wondered when the nurses started over there, they expected to see them all coming over in their uniforms, caps, everything. So they were just dressed like any other student. So one day, Dr. Sanders, a sociology professor, said there's one thing he wanted to know. How was it that there was never any sick nurses? Says, what happens to you people? One of them says, whenever we're not here, we're dead. says, says, when you're in nursing, you get there. You know you've got to get there. Well, I had really a wonderful experience there, and I went to Western Reserve to get my master's while I was there because I was trying to get Good Samaritan to go into a degree program. And I told them they could get their program over at the university and use Good Samaritan as a clinical practice area. Oh, no, they couldn't think of giving up their school. And we had a nursing school committee, and Dean Holmes, who was Dean of Women, was one of the people on there, and she tried to sell it to them too. But anyway, they couldn't see it. Well, I went to Western Reserve, and I was there a year, and I got my master's, and I came back to Good Samaritan. I was there a year. I got an opportunity to go to the Medical College of Virginia to be the director of nursing service. Now, that's a 1,300-bed outfit, and I just had the nursing service. One of the people from the School of Nursing wanted me to come there, and I went over there, and oh, that was just really a wonderful experience too. I couldn't say enough about it. And I'll say, in all those places, we had like disagreements. First, sending the students over to the university. Dr. Grimes was one of the people that opposed it. He said, I don't agree with you, but I agree you turn out the best products in the country. I said, well, that's all I need. Well, then I went over to the medical college, and they had fine people there. Really, for a charity hospital, it wasn't all charity. Now, we had 3 hospitals. One of them was a children's hospital, mostly Negro children. Another one was a Negro hospital. Another one was where they had the white patients. Imagine what that would be like today. And changed. Well, the top 3 floors were for private patients, and we used to call them the VIPs. Well, I met some of the finest people I'll ever meet anywhere as patients through there, and the fine people that we had there in the School of Nursing. In fact, the Dean of Nursing was just wonderful to me when I went over there. We were just bosom friends. And she is now in a nursing home in Fairfax, Virginia, and I write to her, but she can't write to me. She was just wonderful. Now, the dietitian there couldn't have been more cooperative. We were just like that. The executive housekeeper was another good friend. No quibbling, that kind of things. But of course, there was that problem of money for hospitals. That was before they went into Medicare. Well, they were just bringing Medicare in when I retired, and I understand they've been able to do just what they've been able to do here with all the money that Medicare has brought in. You know, they brought in all these good things. Well, I retired from there about 15 years ago. I did in-service education out at St. Mary and Elizabeth for 5 years. And I just had a wonderful experience there. When I came back, Sister Robert Ann and Sister Cecilia Ann and 2 or 3 others knew me over at Good Samaritan because there were just 2 hospitals there. And we were just like that. Whatever one did, the other did, because we wouldn't have the doctors saying, oh, they did that over there. So Sister called me out there, and I stayed 5 years. Well, since then, I've been going down to the General Hospital. I've been a volunteer there, and I'm still there. For instance, one of the people I met down there as a volunteer was the records clerk out at St. Mary's. And the other day, I ran into one of the pharmacy people that was at St. Mary's. And I spoke to him. He said, Miss Pottinger, I didn't think you'd remember me. I said, well, what makes you think I wouldn't remember you? So I can't say that I have ever gone through all of this fuming and fighting. But I've always stood my ground on these things. I'd say now, uh, for instance, I had the assistants there at medical college. They used to come in and say, "Now, Miss Pottinger, I know you're right, but you can't do this." I said, "Oh, run on. You know I'm going to do it. If it's right, you do it." But these are the kinds of things, but we never had that thing where they'd about to strike and all of this. Now, I can understand where the economic and general welfare people have done a great deal, and maybe there are places where it was absolutely necessary, because it looks like it's all over the country that where they have. But I can't help but believe there's better ways of settling things. I think, for instance, and when I look back now, and I'd like to tell everybody else, any person that's going into nursing administration should have preparation in personnel development, because you have to deal with personnel, like policies, procedures, evaluations. They're just getting to a place now where evaluations are, what I would say, effective or fair. You know, now people don't sign their evaluation forms unless they're sure of what that they unless they agree with it. If they don't agree with it, they say they don't. And I think workers know their rights now, and they speak up for them. And of course, the thing that I've noticed down here at U of L, the medical, I work now in the medical intensive care unit. There are 10 beds in there. And when I hear people say that nurses are not what they used to be, they're much more intelligent than we ever were. Now, for instance, I've got a master's degree, but mine isn't in nursing administration. My bachelor's is in microbiology, because they didn't have anything like nursing then. Well, of course, I don't have that good background in nursing. But the nurses of today, I think, are just excellent. I don't care what people say. I am convinced that the general public today is getting, I'm not talking about at the university hospital, they are getting good care. All right, now let's see. Significant events in nursing practice and education. Well, of course, we have men in nursing. And of course, I noticed the men, and I've talked to several down there at the university hospital. All of those, I don't say all of them, but most of those people are getting into top level positions, don't you see? And I'm inclined to believe that they'll get those positions, because women marry and they have to be out to have children, and administration wants, all these other things. And changes in nursing practice. Oh, yes, there's much change now down there at the university hospital, where in the area that I'm in. It's just registered nurses. They're getting rid of all of the licensed practical nurses. And frankly, I don't know, but I think as a group, we've got to be very careful what we do about the licensed practical nurse. I would hate to see them pushed out and not have anything to do. On the other hand, I think we have been responsible for employing them and placing them in positions that they were not prepared for. And now to push them out, I think, would be unfair. Now, I don't think we need them. I think that we could go on now to having the AD, 2-year program,
Yes.
and the 4-year program. But I think we ought to phase these people out, and we should stop preparing them if we don't intend to use them. And I think we ought to look at it and be very fair about it. And I feel this way with maybe these licensed practical nurses. I don't mean maybe. I think many of them could do a fine job in the nursing homes if they were effectively supervised. I just think that many of these patients many of these people are just excellent bedside nurses. You know, they can give good personal care, and in homes they can do it. Now in practice and education, well, education is getting better all the time. There's a lot of things that I question. I think sometimes we need to look at what we're doing and do things better instead of spreading ourselves so thin, but I don't feel I'm adequately prepared to discuss the programs that are offered today because I'm not in contact with it. Now, for instance, I haven't met the new director of nursing there, new dean of nursing there at the university. I don't know her. But I hear that she's doing a fine job, and there's a lot of things I hope our alumni will do to help them there because I still feel keenly about it. Well, interviews' role in these changes or events. Why the change or events was significant? Well, I can tell you, we had to change, we had to employ, we had to prepare and employ aides to take care of the patients. We didn't have anyone, and it was just like a flood coming in on you. Now, they did many things that were dangerous. I don't know that they ever killed any patients, but they certainly made a lot of them. A lot of them were very uncomfortable, and a lot of them could have been helped if we'd have had the adequate knowledge, if they had had knowledge and things that they have today. Now, we've got to think of another thing. People are living now so long we don't know what we're going to do with them. Yeah. It's really, and we have reached the place where we can give patients much better care than they can pay for. What are we going to do with them? And just take now for instance, they're recommending that these people come in the hospital and go out the same day. Well, what was wrong with us that we kept these people in there all this time and wasted all this money? We need to look back and think of how wasteful we've been and what we've done wrong. And, of course, I know when Medicare came in, the medical profession they just couldn't stand it hardly. They thought that. But you know and I know that literally millions of people have been made to see, and the lame have walked, and they've been made comfortable, and there never was a time that senior citizens enjoyed the things that they're enjoying today. And yet, the question is, how are we going to pay for it? Mm-hmm. We're just up against it. I don't know. I don't feel that I'm adequately prepared. Of course, I read this United States News and World Report, all these Kipling letters. I get myself worked up when you see. But you just wonder really what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, for a while, well, I won't say for a while, recently, in the paper was where Jewish laid off a good many people. Now, there never was a hospital, or there hasn't been here in Louisville, a hospital that had better rapport with nurses and better personnel policies. But I understand one of the men that was there has moved over to Humana Audubon Humana Hospital. Well, they're not as busy as they were, and I guess none of the others are, possibly, but University Hospital, they'll always have. But, they have to pay something too if they can. And I think a lot of people will not be going to the hospitals because they can't pay for it, don't you think?
Yes. Because with so many people out of work with no insurance,
Now
and they
that
don't
is
have
the
the money
thing that
coming.
is really frightening. And insurance has reached the place where it is almost prohibitive. Now I was just fixing things for my income tax. Last year, I paid $490, I think, for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Well, what could a family do with the man out and woman out of work? There's just nothing that they can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you see when these people go into the hospital, and I just am aghast when I hear the prices that they have to pay now in hospitals. I haven't kept up with it by any manner of means, but they talk about $300 a day. Well, you just think, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Well, where nursing will be in the year 2000 and why? Well, my opinion is nursing will be better because nurses as a group have never ceased to try to improve themselves. I mean, the profession and their practice. Now, we haven't always used the wisest methods, and we haven't always done that, but as a group, the nursing profession has tried to improve, and we've come far, let me tell you. Don't you think?
Oh, yes.
When you look back, we've come far. And with the slowdown in finances now, nursing's going to have a hard time. Now, for instance, I noticed in yesterday's paper, I guess yesterday was Sunday, where I think college, Spalding's one's going to raise their tuition. Now, how long is it going to take a nurse to earn enough money to pay that back?
Quite a while.
I would figure it takes about $15,000 now, doesn't? Let's see, 4 and 3 is 12. About $15,000 to get through nursing at Spalding. Are there any federal funds available of any kind now?
I believe there is still some
Some
grants
federal.
available. And I think they're through the federal, yes.
Well, I hope that they will, well, I would say this, I'm glad that the diploma schools have had sense enough to close here in Kentucky. Now, you might not believe this, but when I retired from Medical College of Virginia in '66 and came back here, the graduates of General Hospital, the school was closed then, they thought I would raise a furor and try to get that diploma school back. Well, I told them I didn't believe in a diploma school. They'd say, but you're a diploma graduate? I said, of course I am. But just to think, I went to school 7 years to get a degree. You see, they didn't give me any credit for what I had. And I said, they can do it now. I have a niece that's a graduate of Spalding. And when I heard she wanted to go into nursing, I called Sister Agnes Miriam. And I told her, I said, she was dean there. I told her she was interested and asked her to send her some literature. Well, of course, you know, when she got there the first year, she thought she'd be on the floor taking care of patients, and all the people thought. She just thought she should have gone to St. Joe's. I just kept saying, you keep on where you are. Well, when she got through, she got married, of course. She was married 3 years and divorced. She went out to get a job. Well, it was pretty hard then. But when they found out she had a degree, it was easier. And she really could get more money than the diploma nurse, so she could see now. Well, her youngster's talking about nursing, but she wants, and we're all talking to her about a college program. Now, if she can do it, do that. You know, it might be hard, but you'd have to work hard, but it's worth it. And Now these, and I believe in the 2-year program. I think it's good. You know, they can do it, but we haven't used them wisely. We put them in positions. Now for head nurse positions, they've got no business being in those positions. They are qualified to do staff nursing, and that's the way we should use them. It's, the difference is in making nursing judgments. I'll tell you, there's a girl down at the University Hospital. Her name is Libby Wall. She's in charge of that unit. Let me tell you, she just clicks just like that. She can go in and look at a patient, she can make the assessments, and of course she teaches these others. And I don't know how she stands the turnover. You know, they have to rotate night duty and afternoon duty, and she has all the... I never see her upset. She really seems to know what she's doing. And she has her master's from somewhere in Pittsburgh. And now, if I had to do nursing over, I would have most of the work in the office done by non-professional people. Staffing, and just much of this. And I wouldn't have what they call, floor supervisors have one supervisor have several floors. I'd have the person in charge of the unit, the supervisor, because she's closer to it. She knows what's going on. Why call 2 or 3 people to get an order? Like at night, we couldn't talk to a doctor. We'd have to tell the supervisor what we want, and then she would convey it. Why, she didn't know anything about the patient. The person's right there with them is the people that know something about the patient, and they're the people to do it. Now, how the interviewer found out about the Nurse Practice Act. Oh, why, to be a registered nurse in my day was something. I want to tell you. It wasn't too, we hadn't had the Nurse Practice Act too long, but all you ever heard of was you take that state board examination, and you really we started working for taking that examination the day we got there, and we didn't stop until we finished. And I found out about it, of course, in our history of nursing class. Now, when I think of the Nurse Practice Act, I didn't know this until I went to Western Reserve University. We had to write a short history of nursing, about nursing in the state where we were. And I was going through the old journals, and by the way, there at Spalding College, they have a whole set of those journals. Did you know a nurse from General Hospital, she was in the class after me, Beatrice Lusby, gave them her set of journals. She left that in her will from Spalding College, from the day the first journal was out until where she died. And they were there. And General Hospital had a whole set. And I'm thankful that I got the alumna to give those to the School of Nursing there at the University of Louisville. Well, anyway, I was going through this group of old journals there at Western Reserve University, and I saw where the nurses, and they mentioned Mary Alexander and Emma Hunt, 2 nurses, and Sophie Steinhauer and Alice Gaggs, and I knew every one of those nurses personally. And they said that they went to the General Assembly and were trying to get this law passed where nurses could be registered. Well, one old man was so against it because he fell over on the floor, had a coronary. And these nurses got him up and took him back to the hotel, and 2 of them, one of them stayed with him day and one of them at night until he got better. The next year that law was passed, got the law passed. Those people just laughed and said, "Is that the way they do things in Kentucky?" I said, oh, there's a lot more funny things than that that's going on in Kentucky. Now, KSARN, that's Kentucky State Association, RN or KNA. When did the nurse interview join? Join, my dear, you joined the day you got your license and could join. We had an alumna that those people, they had a meeting every month. And let me tell you, if you didn't join, you were pestered, but you were made to think that it was the most wonderful thing in the world to join the State Nurses Association. I know you won't believe it. I've been a member ever, and I'm still a member. I've been a member ever since I graduated in 1922.
I know when I graduated, Brother Perkins, who was the chairperson of the department, encouraged us to join. I don't think too many of us joined, but I did. But
now, why didn't you?
Well, I joined, but I don't know how many else.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the expense of it.
Well, as I say, I think
now
last time I paid dues was about
$110. My dear, now that's, I think the state, that's one of the things that is wrong. And of course they'll say, well, everybody's making good money and so on. But let me tell you, there's many girls that have a family and they're helping to do this. They find it almost impossible. You know, that $110 is a lot of money. So, yes, I've been a member. I'm a retired member this last year. I'm on a retired basis, but I paid all these years there. Now, why did the nurse join? Because I felt it was an honor to join. I felt it was my professional responsibility. And I do now. And I have retired registration. I'm still a registered nurse. That's another thing down here at the hospital. You know, volunteers are not permitted to do anything for patients. You can read to them or you can write a letter, but you can't do anything to them. That Miss Wall said, come here, I need you to feed this patient. Says, you're a registered nurse, aren't you? I said, yes, I've got my registration. She says, you need not tell the volunteer. Says, don't tell me that you're a registered nurse. I said, yes, and that my registration is current. So I feed patients when necessary. And I have bathed one because they were in just such dire straits. I bathed one, but I'm still a registered nurse. She says, if you haven't got sense enough to feed a patient. Well, anyway, that's about the substance of it.
Well, I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Well, I'm glad to talk with you. I just look back and think how I'd like to, you know, be able to be active in nursing again because I really enjoyed it. And I go down to the hospital just to kind of keep abreast of what's going on. You don't feel so stupid.
I doubt if you'd ever have that trouble.
Well, there's so much stuff there that, new equipment and all that I don't know anything about, but I read books, you know, that I can't. Now that's another thing. These things for continuing education, well, they're so expensive that, why, I couldn't afford to do them and not work. Well, I have this restricted registration, so that doesn't bother.
Well, another thing we were in the historical committee we were discussing was, did General Hospital at one time have like a display of like nursing history? I think at one time they had like a library or a display.
Well, we had a display of the uniforms. Now, if you want to see that, it's over at the University of Louisville Library in a case, and we have all the different dolls dressed in the different uniforms for the school throughout.
Well, we have a few uniforms there at the headquarters, and we were just.
I mean, these old. You have the old. I mean, I've got some of the. Well, you see, you just can't dress those up all the time. But anyway, we've tried to collect some of the old uniforms. Now that's another thing. No one wears a uniform today. Do you all wear uniforms out of veterans?
Well, just a white pantsuit, but I mean, it's
Well,
just,
do you
or-
wear a pantsuit? Well, that unit where I am, those people wear operating room suits or pantsuits.
Well, in the intensive care units there at veterans, they have like a particular, well, it's about like the operating room type outfits that they put on when they come in.
Well, that's what these wear all the time, and I've been in the burn unit, and they wear that, and I have been in the coronary care unit, and they wear those kinds. In fact, well, I see some of the, I see the in-service education instructors, but I'm trying to think. Most of them wear those, not on the units. They wear uniform, but no one wears a cap. I think there's one person down there that I see that wears a cap. Does anyone out of veterans? You?
I'm about the only one there at veterans that wears my cap.
Well, now, why don't they? What do they say about them?
Well, we don't have to wear them unless we want to.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of wrestling about wearing my cap.
You do?
Yeah. One of the other nurses she graduated from a 3-year school up in New Jersey in 1951. She said one night, one of the patients, she and I were working, one patient asked her, "Go get the nurse, the one with the hat. I want to see the nurse." And she was been an RN since the year before I was born. She said, "Oh, I guess this RN behind my name doesn't mean anything." So she always kids me because the patients go, "Go get the nurse, the one with the hat."
So then you decided to wear a cap?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from here in Louisville.
Are you? Well, where'd you go to high school?
I graduated from Western. It's out in Shively.
Uh-huh. Well, did you feel that your preparation in high school was adequate for what you got into at Spalding?
Not completely.
You didn't know what to take?
Well, this is kind of in general.
Now, I think that's one of the things that we ought to do more. I think the nursing profession, particularly schools of nursing, should be out should be contacting counselors and advising them what students need if they're going to study nursing.
Well, like when I was in high school, we had to have so many years of science and so many years of English and history and math. I think I probably could have stood an extra year of anatomy and physiology.
Now, how'd you happen to select Spalding?
Well, basically by trial and error. I had
It's more expensive than any of them.
Yes. Well, when I initially got out of high school, I went to the Norton School for a semester, and at the time I thought, well...
You went there for a semester?
Yes, ma'am.
But now, how expensive was that?
I can't really remember the cost as compared to Spalding, but
Well,
I'm sure there's quite a bit of difference.
Well, I want to tell you, the cost at Baptist Hospital was expensive because I just couldn't get over what those diploma kids were paying. And, of course, they said they couldn't continue with their school because they lost money. But, as you say, I know it was, the difference was great. But, how'd you happen to quit Norton?
Well, at the time I thought, well, maybe nursing isn't what I want to get into right now. So I went to U of L for a couple of years, and then
Oh, you went as a student to U of L?
Yes, ma'am. And then I hired in out of veterans as a nursing assistant, and was there for a couple of years as a nursing assistant. I thought maybe going back and becoming an RN would be the route to go. Well, I had applied to Jefferson Community College and the University of Louisville, and they had such a backlog of people wanting to get in. The first year I applied, I wasn't able to get in. Well, the next year, U of L put me off again, and JCC lost my application. So I thought, well, one of the nurses I worked with was a graduate of Spalding, and I was on a ward where we had Spalding students, and the instructor there with them, they said, why don't you go down to Spalding, talk to them. I'm sure you wouldn't.
Oh, how long have you been out now?
It'll be 3 years in May since I graduated.
Do you know Delma Miller down there, down in Spalding? She's in the pediatric department.
I say D. Smith, I think, is the one pediatric instructor I remember.
Well, aren't you glad that you did it now?
Oh, yes. Because with the way
Things are going.
Well, especially like out at Veterans, the way things are going now.
Well, now, what are you out there now?
Just a staff nurse on one of the wards.
Well, now, have you any opportunity to move up?
Well, with experience, we have the different grades by which we're ranked. And like with each grade, it depends on our experience, plus, well, like if I were to go on and get my master's, and then with about another, I think 2 to 3 years of experience, then that would automatically kind of put me up for the next higher grade level from where I am right now.
Well, now, what is the beginning salary for a registered nurse? I don't know what grade they would be out there now,
well,
with a degree.
Well, when I started 3 years ago with just my bachelor's with no prior experience as an RN, I hired in making, I think it was about $18,000. Well, over $18,000.
You started?
Yes, ma'am.
With a bachelor's degree.
And we get paid like every 2 weeks, so each pay period we're getting a day of vacation and a half a day of sick leave. So.
Well, now, of course, the salaries of veterans are much better than anywhere else, aren't they?
Yes.
What is the general salaries now here, I mean, in Louisville? I have no idea. Beginning.
Most, let's see, it wasn't too long ago, I talked to somebody down at Methodist, I believe it was, and then at Jewish, and their starting salary for a bachelor's, and with what experience I had at the time, I think their starting salary was about $9 an hour.
$9 an hour. You don't know how much that would figure.
It figured out to a little bit less than what I was making at the time, but I mean it was fairly close. I mean it only made a difference of maybe $200 to $300 on the year, I believe.
Really? So
really it's not, doesn't seem to be all that far between veterans and some of the other hospitals.
Well, of course, veterans have better benefits, don't they? And you're hoping to, are you going to go on and get your master's?
Well, I had applied at U of K and I'm waiting to get some information from Spalding.
They're gonna, I mean, do they have a master's now?
They're hoping to start their program this fall.
That's right, they got a lot of money.
From Humana. From Humana, I believe it was.
Yes,
They did quite a big grant.
Well, so now for a while, I thought maybe we were going to have many nurses hunting for work. But I noticed the paper yesterday, and I watch the papers all the time. They're advertising for nurses. Of course, what they're doing is getting rid of all of their other, like licensed practical, and their, what did they call them, that patient assistants down there at the university hospital. I've always, we had them classified as hospital aides. But I'll tell you, and of course you see now, they used to get aides for little of nothing. but they have to pay the minimum wage now. Just like, for instance, they have to compete with McDonald's and all of those places.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people figure, well, if I work
Yes.
at McDonald's or somewhere for the same amount, and it's not nearly as
Not
hard to
nearly
work.
as difficult, and you don't have to, the hours are not as bad because they don't work all night most places. Now, they had a setup there at University Hospital for a while that I thought was great. I'd never heard of it before. But they worked 5 days. You know, they'd employ people to work Monday through Friday on all shifts. And then they would have somebody to come in on Saturday and Sunday and work 12-hour shifts, and I don't know, they paid them tremendous salaries. And they had no trouble at all staffing. But when Humana came in, they got rid of that. I don't know why. I guess they didn't have to rely on that staffing.
I know one nurse who had worked out at Veterans went down to General and was doing the 12-hour shifts on weekends and just really liked it because she had, like during the week when her children were in school, and her
She could be at
husband
home.
she could be at home. And then another girl I'd gone to school with started out at Jewish, but went to General when they had the 12-hour shifts on weekends. And she liked them, but she's out at St. Anthony's now.
Well, is there any hospital in town doing it now?
I think there are quite a few places talking about doing it, the 10
Well,
or 12-hour shifts. But
Well, anyway, I just wondered, now that it isn't so difficult to get nurses, because, they're graduating them fast now, so I think the hospitals won't have to do the things they have done heretofore to get them. But at one time, University Hospital just couldn't get help because of conditions and that kind of thing.
things seem to be looking up all over.
I think leveling off, don't you? Of course, there's still many people out of work.
I know there have been quite a few nurses and LPNs both who have hired in and out at Veterans who just have not lasted too long. I mean, would be there like a couple of weeks or a month and quitting. Well, I don't have to work this hard, and I'll go back to wherever it was they had come from to VA in the first place.
Is the work there at Veterans hard?
Well, that's basically where I've worked, so I don't really...
You just really don't know.
Well, I mean, compared to what I've seen in nursing school, it does seem to be harder than some other places, but I think I'd rather be busy.
And of course, you'd rather be busy, and you'd rather be in a secure place because you're building up your tenure.
Well, it's like my parents say, well, just think, if you were working at Jewish, they just laid off so many nurses, but out at Veterans,
By
you
the
can
way,
almost always be sure of a job.
Your parents still living?
Oh, yes.
Do you live at home?
I did it up till about a year or so ago.
Now you live in an apartment?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're very wise to. Well, how's the State Nurses Association doing now?
They just recently got word we're going to be hosting the
Yes,
88 National
ANA.
Convention.
I went to the one that was here in 1928. I remember it very well. Afraid I won't live till that. I was disappointed they didn't have it this year because I
Well, I think they were trying to get it for this year, but
didn't have a hotel room.
I think they said if they had gotten a completion date on the addition to the Gall Town, if they had known it would be done by June, we could have gotten it then maybe.
Well, I was so sorry we missed it. But anyway, it'll be a great thing. You ought to hang around and try to be active in it.
Oh, I'm planning on it.
Now, how is Ms. Duncan still seems to be pretty happy here, doesn't
Oh,
she?
yes.
I've met her several times, and I think we've had a hard time with the executive secretaries. We've changed so often.